Hello, everybody. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Hello, everybody. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, my darlings. Bum, diddly bum, bum, bum. Hi, welcome back. See, I brought my drum. Yeah, what is my drum? It's a coffee can. Yeah, maybe you have something at home that you can use as a drum. It's kind of fun to beat your drum and keep the beat of the words you say or of the songs you sing. Oh, something's inside my drum. Are you kidding me? I gotta look inside. I know there's no coffee in here. Oh, for heaven's sakes, look who's hiding inside my drum. It's Curious George. How nice of you to come and visit us today. Yeah, hiding in the drum. That was a silly thing to do, you silly monkey. Well, Curious George is a silly monkey, isn't he? Yeah, have you watched him on TV or read some of his stories about Curious George? Well, I'm glad you're here today because guess why? I have some stories about Curious George. Yeah, would you like to listen? Yes? Okay. I'm going to ask you to sit over here while we read some stories about you, okay? Now, don't run away because I know sometimes he gets into mischief, doesn't he? Well, the first book that I have about Curious George is Curious George Visits the Zoo. Have you been to the zoo? Oh, in the summertime, that's one of the things that some people like to do, go visit the zoo. Maybe you've done that. Let's find out what happens when Curious George visits the zoo, because we know that Curious George sometimes gets into mischief, doesn't he? That means he gets into trouble. There was a lot to see at the zoo. Have you been to the zoo? All kinds of animals, right? Nice to see. Animals that we don't get to see except at a zoo. Like an elephant, right? George, said the man, would you like to see a real elephant? Let's go. Looks like he was drawing an elephant. There were giraffes with their necks so long and they seemed tall enough to reach the sky. Have you ever seen a real giraffe? They really are tall. Long, long necks, right? There were kangaroos carrying their babies in their pocket. That's how kangaroos carry their babies, in their pocket, in their pouch. And finally, there were the elephants with their floppy ears and their long trunks, and they were munching on some hay for lunch. I guess that's what elephants like to eat for lunch. Hay. People were eating on the park benches and picnicking on the grass. Did you ever go on a picnic? That's another fun thing to do in the summer, isn't it? Yeah, go visit the zoo, go have a picnic, bring your lunch with you. I'm going to find out what time they feed the lions, said the man with the yellow hat. Wait here and don't get into trouble. Well, did you hear that? Don't get into trouble. While George was waiting, guess what? He saw the zookeeper with a pail of bananas that he was going to bring to the monkeys. Well, that's what monkeys like to eat, right? Yeah, bananas. Curious George, you were told to stay there. Don't get into trouble. Let's see if he listened to the man with the yellow hat. The keeper put the pail down to get a drink of water at the water fountain. George was feeling hungry, so he grabbed the pail of bananas and ran away with it. Oh, George, you're being very naughty. Mischievous. He's being mischievous, isn't he? He's getting into trouble. He was told not to get into trouble. Hey, shouted the zookeeper, stop that monkey. But George kept right on running. A crowd of people were standing near the monkey house, just the place for George to hide. Yeah, he'll hide in the monkey house and they won't know who he is because he's a monkey, right? George, take the whole bucket of bananas. Standing by the cage was a little boy who was holding a red balloon with a long string. Suddenly, one of the monkeys reached out and snatched the string from the boy's hand. Snatched it. That means he grabbed it. Oh no. Monkeys are very mischievous. And he ran to the top of the cage with it. Then he tried to squeeze the balloon through the bars, and the other monkeys began to start to shriek and scream. What kind of noises do monkeys make? Do you know? Yeah, that's what they do. They were shrieking and screaming. Oh no, look at the little boy. That was his balloon. The little boy was crying now. Please, couldn't somebody get his balloon back? Asked the mother. None of the people could reach that high. Oh my goodness, I wonder what's going to happen. I feel sorry for the little boy. Do you? But George knew what to do. With the pail in his hand, he climbed up to the top of the cage. He took out a few bananas and fed them to the monkeys. George has good ideas, doesn't he? Do you think he's going to save the day and get that balloon back for the little boy? Yes, look. While the monkeys were eating the bananas, George snatched the balloon and swung down from the top of the cage. And he handed the balloon back to the boy. Well, wasn't that nice of him? That was very nice of you, George. So he was getting into trouble, but then he helped somebody, didn't he? Everybody clapped and cheered. Just then, the man with the yellow hat came running. George, the man cried, I've been looking all over for you. Do you think he'll stay mad at George for getting into mischief? Please don't be angry with him, said the mother. He saved my son's balloon. George should not have taken my pail, said the zookeeper, but he did feed the monkeys, and now it's time to feed ourselves, George, said the man. I guess it's lunchtime, do you think? And that is what they did. And what do you think George had for lunch? Can you guess? Of course, bananas. That's what monkeys like to eat, right? Oh, curious George. You know why they call him curious? Because he's curious. That means he's always looking around for something to do or something to see or something to learn. Are you good like that, learning things, new things? Are you getting ready for school? Because it's very close to school. I think for some children, school is starting this week. Are you starting school this week or maybe next week? Or maybe you're starting pre-K or daycare. Yeah. Well, I have another story about Curious George. This time it's called Curious George Goes to School. Do you think that monkeys should go to school? George, did you really go to school? Oh my goodness. Let's see what kind of mischief George gets into in school. You know him. It was open house at George's school. So the man with the yellow hat had come to school with George. Yeah, did you go to school with your grown-up to check it out and see what it's like and to visit and meet your teacher? So that's what George is doing with the man with the yellow hat. That's the man who owns Curious George, right? I want to speak with your teacher, the man said. So you wait for me here, George, and don't get into trouble. Did you hear that, George? George was standing in front of the art room. He opened the door and he peeked inside. What kinds of things do you think he might see in the art room? Yes, paint maybe, and paper, and brushes, and pencils, and crayons. That's what art is all about, making pictures, right? Mr. Williams, their art teacher, he was just cleaning up. Hello, George, he said. My students will be coming by with their parents today to show them their work. Oh, do you see some of the students have hung up, the teacher has hung up some of their artwork on the wall. Yeah, maybe that's what you're going to see in your school, right? Do some artwork and your teacher will hang it up on the wall. The walls of the art room were covered with students' paintings. There were paintings of all different things like dancers, farmers, racing car drivers, and ice skaters. Children like to draw all sorts of things. Do you like to draw all sorts of things? I know I do. On one wall was a chart with the names of all the children. Each name had a star beside it, except for one. Can you see all the names of the children? This one says David, Susan, Ricky, Alan, Alice, and Donald. But do you see that one star is missing? Alice doesn't have a star next to her name. I wonder why. Let's find out. Poor Alice, said Mr. Williams. She said she left her painting on my desk, but I can't find it anywhere. That's a problem, isn't it? Let's see if we have a good problem solver here. Here, George, why don't you paint a picture while you wait for your friend? So George began to paint. Do you like to paint? I do too. I'll bet George likes to paint. Keep on painting, George, said Mr. Williams. I'll be right back. And off he went. I don't know if he should leave George alone. George kept painting, but it was starting to get very warm in the room. It was getting kind of warm. And nearby, on a nearby table, there sat a big fan. That could cool him off. And so George turned the fan on. He had turned the switch and put the phone on. But as soon as he did, the fan blew the paintings off the walls and all over the room. Oh, George, getting into trouble again. George, cried Mr. Williams, running into the room, look what you've done. Oh, George, he's always getting into mischief. He didn't mean to do that. He didn't realize, did he? Mr. Williams turned off the fan. You better help me clean up now, George, he said. So George picked the papers up off the floor. Some of the papers were underneath Mr. Williams' desk. I guess the fan blew them under there, right? One was stuck between the desk and the wall. Do you see that? Well, when George pulled it out, it was covered with dust, as if it had been there for a long time. So that can't be one that just blew off the table now. It was a painting of a little girl riding a horse. Hey, that's Alice's missing painting, cried Mr. Williams. Now I can give Alice a star next to her name. So curious, George solved the problem. He found Alice's painting. Now she can get a star next to her name, too. When the paintings were all hanging on the walls again, the students and their parents arrived. And there was Alice's painting, and there was George's painting right beside it. Good old George. Now Alice's name is on the chart and has a gold star next to it. See? You see how she got her star there? Thank you for finding my painting, George, said Alice. I like your painting, too. You should also have a gold star. Well, that was nice of her to say. Do you think that Curious George will get a gold star? What do you think? I agree, said Mr. Williams, and he gave George a great big gold star. Good job there, Curious George. But remember, George, when the man with the yellow hat or the teacher tells you to stay where you're supposed to stay, you're supposed to listen and do as you're told, okay? I think he's going to try to remember that for next time. Do you think you'll like it if you go to school? He wants to go to school too. I think so too. Well, I hope you all have fun in school. Hope you have a great school year, and I'll see you again very soon, because when summer is over, which is very soon, that's when school begins. And I have some wonderful stories coming up about the next season, because what comes after summer, do you remember? That's right, fall or autumn. Some people call it autumn, some people call it fall. Yeah, so I can't wait to see you again. Would you like to sing with me? Yes? Okay, ready? Goodbye, everybody. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Goodbye, everybody. Yes, indeed. I'll see you the next time. Bum diddly bum bum bum. Thank you, Curious George. Blow a kiss, and I'll see you next time.